Please break down the background of I guess how you created it, why you created Wordle, the sort of origin story. I'm sure you've probably told it a million times.
Yeah. So on the name front, yeah, it's a play on my name. It's a word game. It was one of those things, I'm sure you've had this with a project where you start it and you just give it it needs a name. You give it a dumb name and you're like, this is a dumb name. I'll change it in the future. And then obviously, like a bunch of things about this project, the domain, for instance, powerlanguage.co.uk/Wordle, probably not where you want to launch a viral game, given that no one can remember any of that and they have to Google it.
Yep.
But yeah, so this was a game that I made for my partner. She and I really enjoy playing word games, especially some of the ones that the New York Times offers. So they have daily crosswords, a game called Spelling Bee that's kind of, you play once a day and it's a word game. So my goal was to make a game for her that she would enjoy playing, and Wordle was it. Like I made a prototype of it a long time ago, back in 2013. And it was similar, but had some key differences. And I basically just put it away. I shared it with a few friends. People were like, yeah, not really. And then at the beginning of 2021, we were playing a lot of games. I got a bit more confident as a developer. And I was like, I think that that idea had some legs. So I dusted it off and I made it. And it was literally just the two of us playing it for 6 months. And then I introduced it to some friends and family in the UK. And then kind of November, it just started, it got picked up by a few like tech bloggers, and then it really, really took off beginning of December. And then, yeah, it's been a roller coaster.
So it started really just with a couple people you shared it with. And did it always have that share metric at the end? Because as soon as I saw those bars, I knew that was going to accelerate it. But at one point, did that get added?
Yeah, so that was added sometime in late November, I think. So what happened, a tech blogger, Andy Bio, he runs waxy.org, where he kind of collects interesting things online. He had tweeted about it and posted a blog post about it, and it got picked up in a New York Times newsletter. And then as a result of that, for reasons that I don't understand, it got really popular in New Zealand. And I've heard about New Zealand that it has a very interconnected Twitterverse, right? Not many people live in New Zealand comparatively to somewhere like the US. So people tend to be very connected. And at this point, that share grid, the emoji share grid that you're talking about, didn't exist. So people would just say, I got the Wordle in 3, and a player over there who I don't know, a woman named Elizabeth S., she started typing out her results as that emoji grid, and then I saw other people copying it. So people literally opening their emoji keyboard and then going back and forward between the two and typing it out. So I was like, I can integrate that into the game really easily. And then that obviously has had a huge impact, because it gives you this artifact that's, even though I did a bunch of things, and I did this throughout Wordle, I did a bunch of things that are the opposite of what you're meant to do if you're trying to make something go viral or grow. Like there's no link back to the game, for instance, in the share grid. It did give you this artifact and invited you to share, and that's obviously done wonders for it in terms of it catching on and spreading around.
Yeah, that is definitely how I found it. I think there was a couple people who shared their grids in my timeline. And by the way, a funny story is I still know some people who typed out the emoji grid manually for some reason, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I found it. It was funny though. You mentioned, you did a couple things in the game that were not necessarily designed to help accelerate its growth. It was just like, it's almost this like pure, simple thing that you sort of stumble across on the internet, kind of like the old days almost a little bit. Were there things you thought about? Like it starts growing and then you've had other experiments like this in the past I want to talk about, but did you think of other things you could do with Wordle to maybe change it up, or was there sort of a beauty to keeping it simple?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think because I had started it simple and I had a really clear idea of what I was doing with it, it made it really easy to say no to any of those compulsions as they came up, because, whereas if my goal had been to make a viral game from the outset, I think I would have been, capitalizing on this in like a bunch of different ways and maybe, but it felt like, I don't know, with all the projects that I've done that have been successful, I found part of it is just kind of doing the thing that feels authentic to me. And if people happen to like that, then great. If they don't, not. And so then allowing Wordle's success to like make me change it, which obviously I was willing to do, right? I did add the share grid, which was something that wasn't there originally. So there is a boundary there, but I don't know, if I start, I have to think about what are my motivations when I'm doing this thing, and are they aligned with? It gets really hard when you're doing things for the wrong reasons, basically. So I find it simpler to keep it the same. Are there any features you would like to see? Is this a feature request coming?
Yeah, no. I like that it's simple. I think as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh well, I can't believe there's only one word a day. I just want to keep playing, but like, or maybe they'd add 5, 6-letter words, 7-letter words. Maybe they'd do a bunch of other stuff. But I like that it was simple. It was just a clean, one single purpose for it the entire time. And I wanted to talk to you because I feel like as a creator, I feel like I relate a lot to you, because one of the things I've said for a long time is one of the best things that never happened to me was having a video of mine just spike and just go super viral, and then feel like I have to chase that carrot and like evolve and become sort of defined by that viral success. How do you feel about, like, you've had other projects? I want to talk about the place and the button and what those are. How do you think about like the success of those projects and not letting it define you?
Yeah, I mean, this is incredibly hard, and it kind of does define me in a way that I don't actually feel comfortable with. Like, I feel good when a project I make does well. I feel bad when a project I make doesn't do well, and that is not healthy, I think. And I think to a certain degree it's unavoidable as a creator, putting stuff out and sharing it. But at the same time, I think it's led to some quite unpleasant places for me personally. And then again, in terms of when we're talking about what is your motivation, it kind of gets confusing. If you're making things to be a success, but that wasn't the motivation when you made the original things that were successful, like, how does all that get? It all gets a bit murky. And so, yeah, I had these projects at Reddit that are kind of more, I would call, like, social experiments than games. And Silicon Valley tends to do these really dumb April Fool's Day things where they like make a prank and it's super lame and everyone looks at it. And at Reddit, I was like, what if we do something different? Like, we use this day where we're kind of locked into the things we can do with our users. What if we use this one day a year where you can kind of do anything online that people are really kind of wasting, in my opinion, and we do try something completely different. And so that is where kind of the Reddit approach now of like often doing a social experiment that explores the way that humans interact at large scales online, kind of came from, and just like a general disappointment with the lack of imagination in the tech world.
I think we're on the same page about tech world April Fools. Yeah, the button was really interesting. I kind of vaguely remember it because it was so long ago. But you were working at Reddit and you had the opportunity to try something cool, something fun, like a social experiment and that was a great day to do it. What was the button? Just break down what exactly that was.
Yeah, so the button's super simple. It is as a subreddit. So Reddit is organized into communities called subreddits of people who share similar interests. There was a subreddit called The Button. And at the top of the button, there was a button and a timer. The timer counts down from 60 seconds. If you press the button, the timer resets back up to 60 and starts counting down. The key thing is that you can only ever press the button once. You have to be logged in, and once you press the button, you can never press it again. So then the question becomes, how long will the collective internet decide to keep pressing this button, right? Like, if it reaches 0, it stops and it will never run again. And so you have a 60-second window in which to press the button. And it turns out the answer is 2 months. So over 2 months, every 60 seconds, someone somewhere chose to press the button, which ended up being over 1 million people. And there was a bunch of stuff there, like the time that you pressed. We gave you, on Reddit, we called it flair. It's like a little tag that appears next to your username the community. And so if you pressed it early, you got a different color next to your name than if you pressed it later. And then so all these social hierarchies started forming. You know, people who pressed it early were seen as impulsive and they couldn't wait. Whereas if you waited for 2 months, you could press it when there were only 2 seconds left on the button. You get red flare, and then people will be like, whoa. But so there all these weird social dynamics emerged from this like really, really simple idea. And that's one thing that I found works really well for me. Is kind of, we were talking about earlier, like, have you been, all the what ifs, like, what if you change this? What if you change this? And I think what I found worked for me with the projects at Reddit, and to an extent Wordle is like trying to make things as simple as possible. It's so easy to say with a creative project, what if we do this? What if we do this? Because no one knows the answer, right? And instead, I found it easier to be like, well, how much can we remove and still leave the core idea here and still make it an enjoyable experience?
Yeah, I love that. That is a fascinating psychological experiment, and just has just the right amount of small, simple tie-ins to like, if you know, that type of thing. It kind of reminds me of when we did the blind smartphone camera test, especially the first year we ever did this. It's just sort of, we had this random idea of like, what if we wanted to compare smartphone cameras, but then just didn't tell people what they were. And we put them up in this like bracket style thing and just hand people 2 pictures and just, hey, pick one. You don't know what it is. And even at that point, it started getting kind of complicated because we had to seed them behind the scenes and sort of figure out how we organize everything. But I like the idea of something being so pure and simple, just a button. How long can we go? And then the natural curiosity of like, well, how long will it go? And what will people do about it? The other one is the place. That was also at Reddit, right? What was that was another subreddit, correct?
Yeah. So that was Place. It was a blank canvas. It was 1,000 pixels wide by 1,000 pixels high, so 1 million pixels total.
Yeah.
And you could, as a user, you could place a tile anywhere on the canvas. And the caveat was you could only place one tile every 5 minutes. And so as an individual, you couldn't really impact the canvas, right? Placing one tile every 5 minutes, you can't have an effect. But if you can find a large group of people that are aligned with you and you can all work together to paint the same thing, essentially. And so it was a bit of a gamble, to be honest, right? Like giving the anonymous internet or pseudonymous internet a blank canvas on which to paint. You know, it's like you assume the worst of the internet is going to emerge. But like part of it for me was understanding that most people, or my belief that most people, when given the choice, wanted to do the good thing. And by creating an experience where you could only achieve anything by collaborating, it was going to be way easier for people to come together to do a positive thing than it was for them to come together and do a bad thing. You know, if you want to draw something heinous on the canvas, you would have to convince a bunch of other people that that was a valuable use of their time. And I think a lot of what we see online, you know, there are like the power of a toxic individual or small group of individuals to really dictate the experience for the many is kind of warps our sense of like, actually, I think most people will try and do positive things.
For sure. That's a great psychological experiment and a great result that sort of came out of it. I do remember that, although I don't know what I did with my tile. I kind of forget. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, it was pretty busy. And to be clear, like there at the very start of it, like a big phallic image started emerging in the center of the canvas, and that was like, I was like, are we going to have to shut this down, right? Like, is this basically a bathroom stall? And one of the things that I've reflected on a lot since then is that we had created this space for people to interact online, and in creating it, we'd made a bunch of decisions that actually really meaningfully impact how people can interact. You know, they're placing tiles. They can only place one every 5 minutes. Another decision that we made and had thought about a little bit, but not a lot, was where they would start on the canvas. So initially we were just starting everyone in the middle, which is where this unpleasant image started emerging. And so we were like, in response to that happening, we were like, well, we control this experience. How can we influence people so that this isn't the outcome? Because we think there's more here. And so the fix there was really simple. We just randomized people's starting position.
Yeah.
And it turned out if they started on a blank area of the canvas, they would think more about what they wanted to do, or like, you know, start creating something totally different. Whereas if we were all dumping people in the same spot together, just they contributed to the first thing they saw, which was,
Yeah, no, it's funny now, you know, reminding myself of like these super really interesting things that have happened in the past. It almost seems like if I had known that maybe one person was behind both the place and the button, that it's like almost inevitable that something else is going to happen that I should pay attention to in a sort of social experiment world. Although Wordle sort of had the opposite origin. You didn't have the huge community of Reddit. You had a small group that turned into a big group. Is there a pressure to like think of the next big idea? Like, this is another creator question.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I returned. So I after Place, I left Reddit. And then I rejoined so I was there not as an engineer initially, and I rejoined as an engineer. And part of rejoining was I work on these projects again. And I did 2 other April Fool's Day projects at Reddit that were no way near as successful. Like, they weren't successful really by my metric. And that really felt bad. Like, I felt like I wanted to be making things that were like Place and that successful. And that kind of, I think, led me astray a bit in terms of the kinds of experience. I wasn't creating experiences because they felt necessarily authentic to what I wanted to do. I was doing them because I wanted to make another viral. I wanted to make something as big as Place. And so, and then Wordle was just like, not any of that at all. Like, I wasn't thinking about any of these things. I was just making the experience my partner would like and that I would like. And it happened to, really catch people's attention. And I think that, so I suppose if I go out deliberately to try and make the next big thing, I feel intense pressure, and I've found that doesn't actually lead to the positive things. But it's kind of frustrating. Like, how do I make this my job? How do I make creating things my job if my only way is like I said, I made a prototype for Wordle in 2013. If I have to mull on every idea for like multiple years, like that, and I'm sure you struggle with this, right? Like, you have to make things on a cadence, and how I'm fascinated by people, how you. I'd be interested to hear how you think about approaching creative stuff when you're on, when you have to have consistent output. Basically, it seems impossible from my perspective.
Yeah, there's a good amount. It's a really good question. There's a lot of outside influence that helps you sort of guide yourself to see what people are interested in, and that helps, little things that appear in videos generally. But the thing that I always started with, which was way back, this was more than 10 years ago, is I started making videos that I would want to watch. So I didn't really have a target audience in mind because it wasn't actually a real job to be a YouTuber. So I was kind of lucky in that sense. So I was just making videos for fun because I was like, I really want a channel to exist that does these types of tutorials and tech videos. So I'm just going to make it. I'm just going to do them because if I found that channel, I'd subscribe. So, hey, maybe it will work. And that's been the common thread through everything. So it kind of works the same way with Wordle. You made something that you knew one person would like. And it turns out there's a lot of people that also like the same thing. So it was a success for that reason. But really the core of it is like there is a guaranteed target demographic of one that I can tailor it really well for. And it sort of grows from there. So
and I think it means when you're creating, you can feel really good about what you're creating, right? Like, you're just doing this thing that feels true to you. And then I have found that answers a lot of other questions. Like, anytime you're making something, a bunch of questions come up, like those what ifs, and having a clear idea of like, no, I'm trying to make the experience that feels good to me, often answers a bunch of those questions. So it's really useful heuristic sort of thing.
All right. Andrew, what are you doing? Got to do the clips outro.
Oh, I was just doing really bad at Wordle today. It was a rough one.
I'm thinking of a 9-letter word.
I only know 5-letter words now.
Oh, sorry. Well, it's
Waveform.
Subscribe.
Oh.
Waveform is...
I told you.
This is why you're doing so bad at Wordle.
Yeah.
You should hit the subscribe button. That should be 9 letters.
Nice.
Want to double check. Subscribe.
Perfect. And like.